All right, well, today we hope to answer the existential question that plagues us all. Are we machines representing a temporary cog and a temporal wheel, or is there something more to life than just biology and science? In the vast cosmological framework of the Urantia Book, the human soul is not merely a theological assertion or philosophical speculation. It is a central reality. The soul is a Urantia entity, born of the sacred partnership between the mortal mind and the indwelling spirit of God. In fact, we learn in 05.11 that
The personality of mortal man is neither body, mind, nor spirit. Neither is it the soul. Personality is one of the changeless reality and an otherwise ever-changing creature experience. And it unifies all other associated factors of individuality. The personality is the unique bestowal which the Universal Father makes upon the living and associated energies of matter, mind, and spirit, and which survives with the survival of the Urantia soul.
That's some great news for you few viewers that actually like my dad jokes. This soul, evolving through experience and choice, is the very essence of human survival and destiny. It is the bridge between the finite and the eternal, the personal and the divine. The Urantia Book presents a universe teeming with purpose, hierarchy, and spiritual administration, in which human beings are not accidents of evolution, but intentional participants in a divine plan of ascension and perfection. The soul begins distinct from personality, begins its real existence when a human being makes their first moral decision. This is when
Adjusters reach their human subjects on Urantia on the average just prior to their 6th birthday. In the present generation, it is running 5 years, 10 months, and 4 days. That is, on the 2,134th day of terrestrial life.
found in 108.2.1. This moment marks the unceremonious arrival of the thought adjuster, a fragment of the Universal Father, who dwells within the mind and begins the process of spiritualization. The adjuster is not a passive observer, but is an active partner if the host is so willing, constantly working to elevate thought, inspire moral insight, and guide the personality towards eternal values. The soul is the result of this constant collaboration. It is not material, nor is it purely spiritual. It is Urantial, a new order of reality that transcends the physical, but is not yet fully spirit. This concept is unique to the Urantia Book and offers a profound alternative to both materialist reductionism and traditional dualism. Materialistic secular panic, as described in paper 195, is a cultural and intellectual crisis born of the unintended consequences of scientific advancement. In other words, such a worldview undermines traditional morality, sense of meaning, and the core foundations of society by reducing and even eliminating the supernatural and transcendent sources of value and purpose. As science has grown in explanatory power, many have mistakenly assumed it can undeniably answer all questions, including those of meaning, value, and purpose, with what little is known associated with the universe. This has led to a justified, widespread existential anxiety, a fear that life is ultimately meaningless, that humans are nothing more than complex biomechanical machines, and that death is the end of all consciousness. The Urantia Book acknowledges this panic, but insists it is a temporary phase, a symptom of spiritual confusion rather than a reflection of ultimate reality. The authors of the Urantia Book argue that science, while powerful in its domain and is ever advancing, is inherently limited. It deals with phenomenon, not values, with mechanisms and not meanings. True religion, by contrast, addresses the inner life, the realm of moral choice, spiritual insight, and personal transformation. As an example, looking at creature patterns such as dogs, these animals have a similar limbic system just like we do, and choose to operate in packs as a survival strategy. Humans can also mirror these behaviors when it comes to clubs, villages, groups, or other forms of congregation. but the often selfless acts of altruism and universal brotherhood go far beyond our ancestral creature programming of staying alive and operating in one's own self-interests. Religion is not in conflict with science because it operates in a different domain. The aforementioned panic arises when science is misinterpreted as a comprehensive worldview rather than a method of inquiry. The Urantia Book calls for a synthesis, a recognition that science, philosophy, and religion to each have their own role, and that only together can they offer a complete understanding of reality. The mechanistic view of life, which sees organisms as machines and evolution as a random incidental process, is critiqued as intellectually dishonest and existentially bankrupt. The Urantia Book points out that the very capacity of the human mind to conceive of mechanism, to reason without causality, and to articulate philosophical systems disproves the notion that the universe is blind and purposeless. I typically throw back this concept as being similar to the Matrix movie, where this notion really became popularized in popular culture. This behavior is where a person questions whether they are a cog in a very big wheel due to such potential insight, even at times questioning their own reality. The authors highlight this intrinsic irony that materialists use their minds, tools of intentionality and creativity, to argue for a universe devoid of intention. This self-refuting posture is described as
the fatalistic agility of the mind of a materialist.
Found in 195, 6.6, a phrase that captures the internal contradiction of denying purpose while exercising purposeful thought that tips the proverbial hat to spiritual endowment. Speaking of creativity, when Jesus was speaking with both Ganid and Ganad about the soul, he indicated in 130.2.10 that
will is the manifestation of the human mind, which enables the subjective consciousness to express itself objectively and to experience the phenomenon of aspiring to be godlike. And it is in the same sense that every reflective and spiritually minded human being can become creative.
In this mindset, even an artist has an opportunity to experience a similar creative flair that God enjoys. The book offers a robust alternative to the despairing, mechanistic worldview. It describes a universe governed by a loving and personal God, the universal Father, whose spirit indwells in every human being. This divine fragment, the thought adjuster, is the source of spiritual insight, moral guidance, and eternal potential. The adjuster does not control the human, but will patiently seek to elevate it, suggesting higher paths and illuminating eternal truths. The presence of the adjuster is the clearest evidence within the Urantia Book's framework that humans are more than biomechanical machines. They are spiritual beings in the making, capable of choosing eternal life and participating in the divine plan. The teachings of Jesus, as portrayed in the Urantia Book, are central to this resistance against materialism. Jesus is not merely a moral teacher or a historical figure, but the incarnate creator son of his local universe that has come to reveal the nature of God and destiny to every human being. His life exemplifies the triumph of spirit over matter, of love over fear, and of purpose over randomness. The religion of Jesus is described as a living faith, rooted in personal experience and sustained by spiritual communion. It is not dogmatic or institutional, but transformative and liberating. This religion is immune to the assaults of materialism because it does not depend on external authority or metaphysical speculation. It is validated in the inner life of the believer, in the fruits of the Spirit, in the growth of the soul. The Urantia Book also addresses the limitations of scientific materialism in explaining human values. It argues that science, while powerful in its domain, cannot account for the origin of values, the experience of beauty, and the imperative of moral duty. These aspects of human life point to a higher reality, one that transcends the physical and invites spiritual interpretation. The authors emphasize that values are not illusions or evolutionary artifacts, but reflections of eternal realities. The pursuit of truth, the appreciation of beauty, and the commitment to goodness are signs of the soul's awakening and its alignment with cosmic purpose. Jesus made quite the eloquent appeal to Ganid when Ganid asked whether or not a dog had a soul. When Jesus replied in 132.8,
"The dog has a mind which can know material man, his master, but cannot know God, who is spirit. Therefore, the dog does not possess a spiritual nature and cannot enjoy a spiritual experience. The dog may have a will derived from nature and augmented by training, but such a power of mind is not a spiritual force. Neither is it comparable to the human will. Inasmuch as it is not reflective, it is not the result of discriminating higher and moral meanings or choosing spiritual and eternal values. It is the possession of such powers of spiritual discernment, discrimination, and truth-choosing that makes mortal man a moral being, a creature endowed with the attributes of spiritual responsibility and the potential of eternal survival." Jesus went on to explain that it is the absence of such mental powers in the animal which makes it forever impossible for the animal world to develop language in time, or to experience anything equivalent to personality survival in eternity.
Consequently, you watching this very video is a sign that you're currently developing your own soul. There is no true mechanistic or material benefit towards learning the teachings of the Urantia Book, but it might satiate a part of you that so longs for something more out of life that you can't put your finger on. Reflecting even on this premise in this context requires deep contemplative thought that Jesus encouraged. The dog does not ask itself why it needs food or even comfort, and makes such decisions based off of instinct and desire. It should even be noted that even thought adjusters were not an automatic inheritance on this planet. Prior to Andon Infanta, our ancestors of humanity did not have the capacity for eternal survival, and hence were never given thought adjusters. Andon Infanta were unique from their tribe in that
the decision of Andon Infanta to flee from the primates tribes implies a quality of mind far above the intelligence which characterized so many of their later descendants who stooped to mate with their retarded cousins of the Samaean tribes. But their vague feeling of being something more than mere animals was due to possession of personality and was augmented by the indwelling presence of the thought adjusters.
Found in 63 1.4. During this time, the adjuster was only merit-based prior to the outpouring of the Spirit of Truth, where we now all enjoy the fruits of such an endowment. When it came to Andon, he especially exhibited his superior intelligence, being the first creature on our planet to fasten a sharp piece of flint to the end of a club for protection, and later Fanta creating fire using flint and a bird's nest, found in 63 2.5. It was this very intelligence that increased the twins' chance of eternal survival, due to the receptivity of adjutant mind spirits, along with other cosmic influences. In this context, the human resistance to materialistic secular panic is not merely intellectual, but is spiritual. It is the refusal to accept a worldview that denies the deepest intuitions of the heart and the highest aspirations of the mind. It is the affirmation that life has meaning, that love is real, and that destiny is attainable. This resistance is embodied in the lives of those who seek God, who serve others, and who cultivate the soul. It is expressed in art, philosophy, acts of compassion, and in moments of worship. It is the quiet but persistent testimony of the human spirit, in that it refuses to be reduced to simplistic and ungodly mechanisms. The Urantia Book envisions a future in which this resistance becomes a renaissance. It predicts that the teachings of Jesus will eventually triumph over materialism. Not through coercion or debate, but through the lived example of believers, along with the constant pull of our celestial helpers. As people discover the joy of spiritual communion and the peace of moral certainty, they will abandon the sterile philosophies of mechanism. and embrace the vibrant reality of sonship with God. This transformation will not be imposed from above, but will arise organically from within, as individuals awaken to their true nature and destiny. The soul in this vision is the protagonist in the human story. It is the bridge between the finite and the infinite, the arena of moral struggle and spiritual growth. It is the repository of experience, the seed of eternal life, and the partner of the divine. Its development is the purpose of mortal existence, and its survival is the promise of the universe. The Urantia Book calls readers to recognize this truth, to nurture their souls through faith and service, and to resist the despair of materialism with the hope of spiritual reality. The book's cosmology reinforces this view. It describes a universe of universes, governed by divine personalities and organized for the progressive perfection of all beings. Human life is not an isolated phenomenon, but part of a vast and purposeful system that is not broken. The soul is designed to ascend through the Urantia worlds, to be educated in the schools of the local universe, and eventually to stand in the presence of the Universal Father on Paradise. This journey is not automatic. It requires cooperation, faith, and the sincere desire to do the will of God. But it is open to all, regardless of origin, status, or belief. The soul is the great equalizer, the common inheritance of all who choose truth and love. The Urantia Book also emphasizes the role of personality in this process. Personality is a unique gift of the Universal Father, distinct from mind, spirit, or soul. It is the unifying factor, the chooser, the interrogator. Personality survives death because it is not dependent on the material body. When the soul is sufficiently developed and the adjuster has fused with the personality, the human being becomes a unified and eternal creature and is given their final name. This fusion is the goal of mortal life, the moment when the divine and the human become one. In 47 8.5, we learn,
immediately upon the confirmation of adjuster fusion, the new Urantia being is introduced to his fellows for the first time by his new name and is granted the 40 days of spiritual retirement from all routine activities wherein to commune with himself and to choose someone of the optional routes to Havona and to select from the differential techniques of paradise attainment.
This vision stands in stark contrast to the mechanistic view, which sees death as the end of consciousness, as a temporary illusion. The Urantia Book insists that death is not extinction, but a transition. The soul, if viable, awakens on the mansion worlds, continues its education, and progress towards perfection. This process is not arbitrary, but is governed by divine justice and mercy. It reflects the character of a universe that is personal, purposeful, and loving. Thank you again for watching today's video, your continued support, and I'll see you on the next one.